Hello, y'all. This is Rational Vids coming to you today with a very, very, very harsh story. It's very scary, but also I'm going to calm some people down by saying this is only a draft opinion. This is not a final decision made by the Supreme Court. This is a draft opinion, draft majority opinion, but a draft opinion. So it says the Supreme Court has voted to overturn abortion rights, draft opinion shows. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. Justice Alito writes, and an initial majority draft circulated inside the court. The Supreme Court has voted to strike down the landmark Roe v. Wade decision. So, first of all, they have not voted to do anything. This is an initial draft majority opinion. They have not voted to do, this is not a final vote. This is how the court basically talks to each other. This is according to an initial draft majority opinion written by Justice Alito, Samuel Alito, circulated inside the court and obtained by Politico. If you don't know who Samuel Alito was, he was a justice put in there by George W. Bush, of course, one of the worst presidents of all time. Probably one of the worst, if not the worst president of all time. And he is notoriously conservative. Like, his interpretation of the Constitution is as conservative as it gets. It's almost like he's a conservative judicial activist rather than what they call, what conservatives usually refer to as judicial activists, which are liberal. Only liberals can be judicial activists, not conservatives. Never conservatives. But anyway, the draft opinion is a full-throated, unflinching repudiation of the 1973 decision, which guaranteed federal constitutional protections of abortion rights, and a subsequent 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that largely maintained the right. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, Alito writes. We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled, he writes in the document, labeled as the opinion of the court. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. And by returning it to the people's representatives, he means the people that actually don't represent the people of the United States. They're the people that represent themselves and their wallets. Deliberations on controversial cases have in the past been fluid. Justices can and sometimes do change their votes as draft opinions circulate, and major decisions can be subject to multiple drafts and vote treading, sometimes until just days before a decision is unveiled. The court's holding will not be final until it is published, likely in the next 2 months. The immediate impact of the ruling as drafted in February would be to end a half-century guarantee of federal constitutional protection of abortion rights and allow each state to decide whether to restrict or ban abortion. It's unclear if there have been subsequent changes to the draft. No draft decision in the modern history of the court has been disclosed publicly while a case was still pending. The unprecedented revelation is bound to intensify the debate over what was already the most controversial case on the docket this term. The draft opinion offers an extraordinary window into the justices' deliberations in one of the most consequential cases before the court in the last 5 decades. Some court watchers predicted that the conservative majority would slice away at abortion rights without flatly overturning a 49-year-old precedent. The draft shows that the court is looking to reject Roe's logic and legal protections. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division, as opposed to what this will do, which is inflame debate and deepen division. This is going to get the public off of the real issues, the real economic issues, and back onto protecting basic human dignity. While the billionaire politicians and the billionaires that own those politicians get to just count their money. Oh, look at them go. Look at them struggle for basic civil rights. A person familiar with the court's deliberations said that 4 of the other Republican-appointed justices, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett had voted with Alito in the conference held among the justices after hearing oral arguments in December. And that lineup remains unchanged as of this week. The three Democratic-appointed justices, Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, are working on one or more dissents, according to the person. How Chief Justice John Roberts will ultimately vote, and whether he will join in already a written opinion or draft his own, is unclear. The document, labeled as a first draft of the majority opinion, includes a notation that it was circulated among the justices on February 10th if the Alito draft is adopted. It would rule in favor of Mississippi in the closely watched case over that state's attempt to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. On Tuesday, after this article was published, Roberts confirmed the authenticity of the draft opinion and said he was ordering an investigation into the disclosure. To the extent this betrayal of the confidences of the court was intended to undermine the integrity of our operations, it will not succeed. The work of the court will not be affected in any way, Roberts pledged in a written statement. This was a singular and egregious breach of that trust that is an affront to the court and the community of public servants who work here. Roberts also stressed that the final opinion, the draft opinion, does not represent a decision by the court or the final position of any member on the issues in the case. The court spokesperson had declined comment pre-publication. So, first of all, just because somebody leaked the opinion, first of all, this is like a constitutional right that people have held for almost 50 years. I was born with the right. I was born when women have the right to an abortion, and I'll be damned if I die if they don't. Now, I'm somebody who's a moderate on abortion. I believe abortion can happen in the first trimester. I tend to think about this more scientifically. It's not infanticide when it happens in the first trimester because there's not, or even the first half of the second trimester, because it hasn't reached the point of viability. But after it reaches the point of viability where it can live outside the womb just as it could inside the womb, I would say ban it then. But allow it on demand in cases of rape, in cases of economic or social situations, and educate more people on alternatives to abortion, such as wearing condoms or what else? Oh, taking contraceptives or ordering abortion pills. Now, some people are saying that this decision will have damaging consequences beyond abortion rights. Like the reasoning that Alito used to overturn Roe versus Wade attacked the 14th Amendment principles directly and would be interpreted and could be interpreted to overturn decisions such as Obergefell v. Hodges, which legalized same-sex marriage, and even further decisions down the road, such as Lawrence v. Texas, which eliminated sodomy laws, which prevented, oral and anal sex, and would even go so far as to overturn not Brown versus Board of Education. What was it? Loving versus Virginia, which legalized interracial marriages. If it goes that far, that would obviously be terrifying. However, many Republicans have stated that same-sex marriage is a settled issue and they don't really want to wade into it because they try to make a difference. They try to say, abortion is about life and death of an unborn child or unborn fetus, versus same-sex marriage, decisions like same-sex marriage, Lawrence v. Texas, and Loving versus Virginia, which are not damaging to human life at all. So there's not, even with all the fear-mongering by people such as Humanist Report or Secular Talk or any of the other mainstream media Democrats, this will not go as far. Now, if Roe versus Wade was overturned, which is looking more and more likely that it will, but this is not a final decision, if it is overturned, it will go to the states. It won't ban abortion at the federal level. Basically, states will have the right whether to allow abortion or prohibit abortion. And in the case of my home state, it will probably prohibit abortion until we can vote in Democrats. But in the cases of in the case of like in the case of places like California, Colorado, Washington, New York, New Jersey, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, they will all allow abortion. They in many of these cases they have constitutional protections for abortion in their state laws. So they will continue to allow abortion within those state laws. So it's not like abortion will be banned everywhere, but it's going to make it much, much harder for lower income people and marginalized communities to get medically necessary abortions when they have to fly to other states, or they'll have to go to other states to get it, and they won't have the financial resources in order to do so. One could argue like, oh, just take contraceptives, just wear a condom. You could argue all these things. But in the case that it's endangering a woman's health, if a woman is not allowed to an abortion, even in the cases of saving her own life or her medical health, or in the case of in which a fetus has abnormalities which is impacting that woman's health, what do? What's going to happen? It might kill the women. So much for being pro-life Republicans. Like, this is why I'm a moderate on abortion, and I'm not insanely pro-life, nor am I insanely pro-choice where I would allow partial birth abortions on demand. Like, that is not something that I would stand for even as a leftist. I would not stand for that. Now, some people do stand for that, and there are places in the United States where there are no limits on when you can get an abortion. Those states include states like Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada. I think not Nevada, but Colorado, New Mexico, and Oregon. That's what I know. And then Hawaii the state of Hawaii and the state of Alaska will probably not change their abortion laws either. But this should be a wake-up call, because not only have the Republicans turned to very far-right theocratic sort of approaches to abortion, and they could take more and more rights away if they find it acceptable to challenge constitutional decisions. But this lies on the Democrats too. Because what have the Democrats done in the last 50 fucking years? They could have codified Roe versus Wade into law. They had super majorities at some points during those times. But the Carter administration, the Carter administration, the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, and the Biden administration have done effectively nothing. Obama had a supermajority in his first term. He could have done it then. He didn't. The Carter administration was closest to codifying Roe versus Wade, but Democrats became a bunch of pussies after a while and stopped fighting for people. And now they're endorsing corporate Democrats. They're endorsing pro-life Democrats. Nancy Pelosi endorsed extreme pro-life Henry Cuellar, who identifies as a Democrat from South Texas. South Texas is very different because even as a Democratic majority, they are pro-life down there because they're very Catholic. But Nancy Pelosi endorsed these people rather than progressive candidates who would preserve at least some of the rights to abortion. They could have codified it into federal law years ago. They're not doing it. Joe Manchin is basically a Republican in Democrat clothing. He's not going to vote on it. So what now? What do you say? This is disgraceful, honestly. Honestly, very disgraceful. We'll end up like Mexico if this becomes law. If this decision is overturned, we'll become like Mexico. In some places, they'll have a right to abortion, but in some places, they won't. It works that way in Mexico. You want me to search abortion in Mexico? Since 2021, abortion in Mexico is no longer a crime, although its legalization still varies by state. But penalizing it is unconstitutional. So, this is what abortion in Mexico looks like. You have it legal in some states like this, in Oaxaca and Distrito Federal, but in some states you have a lot more restrictions on it. And then in the state of Coahuila, you have it in the states of Coahuila and Chihuahua, you have it almost fully banned in many of these states. So that's what it's going to be like. That's what it's going to be like. In Texas is going to be like Costa Rica. They're only allowed only in order to preserve the life or physical health of the woman. They're illegal in almost all cases, including when the pregnancy is a result of rape. It's going to become just like most countries in Latin America, and that's not even the worst country in Latin America. You have countries in Latin America like Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, and the Dominican Republic that have all completely banned abortions. Completely banned, not even in cases of life. Granted, there are going to be some U.S. states. I don't think U.S. states would go far enough to eliminate cases of life. There's only one country in Europe that bans it completely, and that's Malta. Malta has also legalized same-sex marriage and marijuana very recently, which is ironic. So it's very, very, very mixed situation in the United States right now. And hopefully, if you look up abortion in my home state, it would penalize the doctors with up to life in prison. Would it penalize women? No, there was a lawmaker who filed a bill that would criminalize abortions, and it would give the death penalty to women. It would effectively become Afghanistan. That's fucking backwards. Extremely fucking backwards. Because they're equivocating it with murder. Even though it's not murder or infanticide, especially within the first trimester. Unbelievable how extreme Republicans can get. But this is why you need a strong Democratic Party. Because if you don't have a strong Democratic Party, you're going to be faced with this crap. Because the Democratic Party is doing jack shit for you right now to fix this. And Biden's rolling over like a fucking dog and scrambling. Thanks for watching Rational Vids. Like and subscribe.